In a bustling American city, food critics wield power like kings. A single review can make or break a restaurant overnight. One critic, known for his sharp tongue and arrogant ways, steps into a new restaurant with plans to destroy its reputation before it can rise. What he doesn't know is that behind the kitchen doors, a black chef with unshakable pride and unmatched skill runs the show. The night unfolds with humiliation, arrogance, and a clash of egos. But when the truth of ownership comes to light, the critic's world is shaken to its core. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. The rain had just stopped when Marcus adjusted his white chef's coat and tightened the knot on his apron. He stood in the kitchen of the Haven, a brand new restaurant that had opened its doors in downtown Chicago only 3 weeks ago. The kitchen gleamed with spotless counters, polished pots, and ovens still carrying the shine of newness. Tonight was no ordinary night. Word had spread that Arthur Langston, one of the toughest and most feared food critics in America, was coming to dine. Marcus had heard plenty about Langston. Stories floated around in the culinary world about how his reviews had destroyed careers. One bad article in the city paper, and chefs found themselves serving at diners instead of fine dining halls. He was infamous for humiliating chefs, mocking them in his columns, and turning readers against restaurants he disliked. But Marcus wasn't afraid. Cooking was not just his job, it was his life. Every spice, every cut of meat, every delicate fold of dough carried his soul. Born and raised in Atlanta, Marcus had spent his early years helping his mother in their small kitchen, learning flavors the way other kids learn songs. Now, after years of sweat, rejection, and determination, he was finally the head chef of his own place. The Haven was his dream taking form. The staff buzzed with nervous energy. Waiters polished glasses the third time, while the hostess rehearsed greetings under her breath. In the kitchen, Marcus's sous chef, a wiry young man named Kevin, whispered, "Chef, he's here. Table 6. Marcus took a deep breath. "All right, team. We give him the best. No mistakes tonight." In the dining hall, Arthur Langston sat at the center of attention without even trying. He was a tall man with silver hair and sharp glasses, his black suit pressed to perfection. He leaned back in his chair, a smirk already tugging at the edge of his mouth as he surveyed the menu. He didn't smile at the waitress who approached him, didn't thank her when she poured his wine. To him, this was a battlefield, and he was ready to strike. Marcus watched from the kitchen window as the first dish was sent out, roasted duck with orange glaze, resting on a bed of wild rice. It was one of Marcus's signature creations. His hands tightened slightly as the plate was placed before Langston. The critic picked up his fork, examined the plate as if searching for flaws, and took a slow bite. The dining hall fell quiet, as though everyone was waiting for a verdict. Langston chewed, swallowed, and let out a small laugh, not the laugh of joy, but of dismissal. Within minutes, the humiliation began. He waved down the waitress and spoke loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Tell your chef," he sneered, "that this duck tastes like it's been sitting in a cheap diner's kitchen for hours. Overcooked, bland, amateur work." The waitress's cheeks flushed red, and Marcus's jaw tightened. He wasn't a man who lost control easily, but hearing his food mocked in public was like being spit on. He turned to Kevin. "Fire up the next course. Don't let it shake you." Course after course rolled out. Seared salmon, truffle pasta, braised short ribs. Each time, Langston found a way to belittle it. Too salty. Too dry. "Who taught your chef to cook? A prison cafeteria?" His words cut through the air like knives, meant not just for Marcus, but for the entire restaurant to hear. Other diners shifted uncomfortably, whispering among themselves. Marcus's hands trembled as he plated the final dish, a bourbon pecan pie, a tribute to his late mother. He poured everything he had into it, remembering her laughter, the warmth of their home, and the nights they spent baking together. It wasn't just dessert. It was a story on a plate. The pie was set before Langston. The critic stabbed a piece with his fork, chewed, and rolled his eyes. Typical, sweet, but meaningless. Like something from a backyard barbecue. The room froze. Some guests gasped softly. Marcus stepped out from the kitchen, unable to remain silent any longer. He approached Langston's table, wiping his hands on his apron, and said, "With all due respect, sir, my food deserves more than cheap insults. You may not like it, but don't call it meaningless." Langston raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by the confrontation. "Ah!" The chef himself finally decided to show his face. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You want to be in this business? Boy, you need tougher skin. If you can't handle criticism, maybe you should stick to flipping burgers." The word "boy" hung in the air, heavy and sharp. A few guests gasped louder this time. Marcus's chest burned with fury, but he held his ground. He locked eyes with the critic and replied, steady but firm, "I don't flip burgers, and I don't cook for people who enjoy tearing others down. I cook for those who respect the craft." A murmur swept through the dining hall. Some guests nodded quietly in support, but Langston only smirked wider, clearly enjoying the scene he had caused. As Marcus walked back to the kitchen, the tension in the air was thick enough to slice with a knife. His team looked shaken, unsure whether to be proud of him or terrified of what Langston's review would do to them. That night was far from over. The storm wasn't outside anymore. It was inside the Haven. The night dragged on like a heavy weight on Marcus's shoulders. After the humiliating scene in the dining hall, the kitchen was quieter than ever. Pots clinked softly, knives tapped against cutting boards, but no one dared to speak loudly. Every pair of eyes flicked toward Marcus, waiting for his reaction. Kevin finally broke the silence. "Chef, do you think he'll write the review tomorrow?" Marcus pressed a damp cloth to his forehead. He could feel the sweat, even though the kitchen air was cool. "He'll write it tonight," Marcus muttered. "Men like him don't waste time. By morning, the whole city will read it." The thought gnawed at everyone. A bad review from Arthur Langston wasn't just ink on paper. It was a death sentence. It meant empty tables, canceled reservations, and food going cold in the kitchen with no one to eat it. Out in the dining hall, Langston finished his wine slowly, as though he had all the time in the world. He scribbled a few notes in a little black notebook. Each stroke of his pen felt like a knife carving into Marcus's future. Guests at nearby tables whispered and kept sneaking glances, unsure where to look at the critic or the door where Marcus had disappeared. Finally, Langston stood. He adjusted his jacket, tapped his pen on the table, and announced in a loud, mocking tone, "Well, I've had my fill of mediocrity. Perhaps next time the chef will surprise me." He left a $20 bill on the table, not for generosity, but as a final insult. The door shut behind him, and a thick silence followed. Marcus leaned against the counter, his knuckles white. He wanted to scream, to throw a pan across the room, but he didn't. Instead, he said, "Clean up? We've still got customers who came here to enjoy themselves. We can't let one man ruin their night." Kevin nodded, but the tension didn't lift. By midnight, the last guest trickled out. The dining room, once buzzing with conversation, stood quiet except for the sound of chairs being stacked. Marcus stayed behind in the kitchen, staring at the clock. 12:30 a.m. The review was probably already half written. He pulled out his phone and scrolled nervously, waiting for the city paper's site to update. His heart thumped harder with each passing second. Kevin poked his head in. "Chef, go home. You've been on your feet since morning." Marcus shook his head. "I can't. Not tonight." The young sous chef sighed. "All right, but don't stay too long. You'll need your energy for tomorrow." When Kevin left, Marcus sat at the prep table, staring at his reflection in a steel mixing bowl. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, the voice that had always pushed him forward. "Son, people try to drag you down, but you know what you're made of. Don't ever let them take that from you." At 1:10 a.m., the article went live. Marcus's phone buzzed. The headline was brutal. "The Haven, a hollow shell with overconfident cooking." Marcus swallowed hard as he read. "Chef Marcus Daniels may carry himself with pride," Langston wrote, "but his food tells another story. Overseasoned, underthought, and lacking the finesse expected of fine dining. The duck was leathery, the pasta clumsy, and the pie, though sentimental, carried the simplicity of a picnic dessert. The Haven offers nothing new, nothing inspiring. A forgettable experience, run by a chef not ready for big stage." Marcus dropped the phone onto the counter. His hands trembled. He had expected harsh words, but this was poison. By morning, the phones at the Haven started ringing, but not with new reservations. People canceled their bookings one after another. "We read the review," they said. "We'll try another place." Marcus walked into the restaurant that afternoon and found his staff staring at him with worried eyes. The dining room sat empty, chairs perfectly aligned, tables set but untouched. Kevin approached. "Chef, what do we do?" Marcus clenched his jaw. "We fight. This is our place. One critic won't define us." But it wasn't that simple. By evening, only 3 tables were occupied. The waitress whispered that the guests had come just to see the disaster Langston talked about. They weren't there to enjoy the food. They were there to watch Marcus stumble. Marcus still cooked with all his heart. Every plate left the kitchen with care, but he could feel the judgment in the air. He watched guests taste his dishes with skeptical expressions, whispering among themselves. Some left early, not even finishing their meals. The weight grew heavier with each passing day. The Haven, which had been full of life and promise only a week earlier, was shrinking into silence. On the third night after the review, Marcus sat alone in the dining room long after closing. The lights were dim, casting long shadows across the floor. He stared at the empty tables, his reflection flickering in the glass windows. The door creaked open. Kevin stepped in, holding a bottle of water. "Chef, you should go home. It's late." Marcus didn't look up. "Kevin, have you ever felt like everything you worked for was slipping through your fingers?" Kevin hesitated, then sat across from him. "Yeah, but you taught me something. You said the kitchen doesn't lie. If you put love and skill into the food, it'll speak for itself." "Maybe, Maybe we just need to make it louder. Marcus gave a tired smile. You really believe that? I do. And I believe in you. The word struck something deep in Marcus's chest. For a moment, the darkness lifted. He thought about his mother again, about all the years he had spent perfecting his craft, about the pride he felt when the Haven first opened its doors. That night, Marcus made a decision. He wasn't going to let Arthur Langston's review be the last word. The next day, Marcus called a meeting with his staff. He stood before them, his voice firm but steady. We're not giving up. If people want to doubt us, fine. Let's prove them wrong. We'll refine the menu, sharpen the service, and show this city who we are. Langston thinks we're weak. Let's make him eat his words. The staff exchanged nervous but hopeful glances. Kevin grinned. Now that's the chef I know. But as Marcus turned back toward the kitchen, he knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Every move from now on mattered. One mistake could bury them deeper. And deep down, he also knew something else. This wasn't just about saving the Haven. It was about facing Arthur Langston again one way or another. The days after Langston's review felt like a storm that wouldn't end. Each morning, Marcus arrived early at the Haven, unlocking the doors to a dining room that had once buzzed with excitement but now sat still, like a stage after the actors had walked off. The chairs were neatly tucked in, silverware polished, glasses sparkling, but all of it waiting for an audience that never came. One Tuesday afternoon, Marcus sat at a corner table flipping through the reservation book. His chest tightened as he turned page after page, finding nothing but blank spaces. Weeks ago, every slot had been filled. Now, silence mocked him. Kevin walked over, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He placed one in front of Marcus and tried to sound casual. We still got a few walk-ins tonight. 3, maybe 4 tables. Marcus nodded without looking up. He appreciated Kevin's optimism, but the truth was hard to ignore. The restaurant was bleeding money. Food supplies went unused, and staff stood around with more free time than tasks. The waiters whispered about finding other jobs. The hostess had already quit. That evening, when the few guests arrived, Marcus threw himself into the kitchen. He sliced, stirred, and plated with the intensity of a man fighting for survival. Every dish that left his hands was precise, polished, and flawless. He made sure of it. But the looks he saw from the dining room window were the same. Skeptical stares, half-hearted nods, and whispers behind menus. At one table, a man leaned over to his wife and muttered, "This is the place that Critic destroyed. Let's see if it's really that bad." Marcus heard it clearly, even through the glass window. The words stuck in his chest like thorns. After the service ended, the staff gathered in the kitchen. Tension lingered in the air. A waitress finally spoke. "Chef, I don't know how long this place can survive like this. We had 4 tables tonight." 4. Marcus set down his knife, his expression unreadable. "I know, but we're not closing. Not now." "But how, chef?" she asked, her voice cracking with frustration. "People don't want to give us a chance anymore. They trust Langston more than they trust us." For a moment, the silence was crushing. Marcus looked at each of his staff, their tired faces, their slumped shoulders. Then he said, with quiet determination, "Then we find a way to change their minds. Langston isn't the final word on food. We are." The next morning, Marcus walked through the streets of Chicago, lost in thought. The city buzzed with its usual chaos. Taxis honking, people rushing to work, vendors calling out. But Marcus barely noticed. His mind was racing. He needed a plan, something bold, something that would make people look at the Haven again. He ended up in a local farmer's market, surrounded by stalls bursting with color. Bright red tomatoes, golden honey jars, baskets of fresh herbs. It all reminded him why he had chosen this path. Food wasn't just fuel. It was life. It was culture. It was art. He picked up a handful of basil leaves and inhaled the rich aroma. An idea began to take shape in his mind. That evening, Marcus called the staff together. They gathered in the dining hall, sitting at the neatly set tables. He stood at the head of the room and said, "We're launching a new menu. From scratch. No more playing it safe. We're going to cook food that tells a story, our story, something the city can't ignore." The staff exchanged uneasy glances. Kevin leaned forward. "Chef, are you sure? That's risky. If people already doubt us, they doubt us because we're letting Langston define who we are." Marcus interrupted. His voice was firm, steady. "We have to show them that the Haven isn't just another restaurant. It's different, it's real, and it's worth their time." The waitress raised an eyebrow. "What kind of dishes are we talking about?" Marcus's eyes lit up for the first time in days. "Food that honors where we come from. Food that connects with people. Dishes that tell them about my roots, about the South, about family and resilience, but done with the precision of fine dining. They'll taste history, but they'll also taste mastery." Kevin nodded slowly, a smile tugging at his lips. Now that's something they can't ignore. The staff began brainstorming, throwing ideas on the table. Kevin suggested blending traditional Southern spices with modern plating styles. Another cook proposed a gumbo served in miniature cast-iron skillets. The energy in the room shifted. For the first time since Langston's review, hope flickered. For the next week, the kitchen transformed into a battlefield of creativity. Marcus and his team experimented late into the night, testing recipes, tweaking sauces, perfecting textures. They argued, they laughed, they failed, and they tried again. The air was thick with the smell of roasting meats, caramelized onions, and fresh herbs. Marcus poured himself into the work, like a man possessed. His hands were raw from chopping, his back ached from standing, but his spirit burned brighter with each new creation. One night, after hours of trial and error, he pulled a dish from the oven. Smoked short ribs glazed with bourbon, served with sweet potato puree and collard greens. He sat on the counter, tasted it, and smiled. It was bold. It was soulful. It was unforgettable. When the new menu was finally ready, Marcus made a risky decision. Instead of quietly rolling it out, he organized a launch night. Invitations went out across the city, not just to foodies, but to community leaders, local artists, and even neighborhood families. He wanted everyone to see what the Haven really stood for. The night of the launch, the dining hall glowed with warm lights. Candles flickered on every table, and soft jazz filled the air. Marcus stood in the kitchen, peeking through the servers' window as guests began to arrive. The seats filled one after another until the dining room buzzed with life again. But even as excitement rippled through the restaurant, a shadow loomed. In the corner of the room, sitting with that same smug smile, was Arthur Langston. Marcus's chest tightened. He hadn't expected the critic to come back, at least not so soon. But there he was, notebook in hand, ready to strike again. Kevin leaned close and whispered, "Chef, he's here. What do we do?" Marcus looked at his team, then back at the critic. He exhaled slowly and said, "We do what we came here to do, cook. And this time, we let the food speak louder than his words." The orders started pouring in. The new menu was in motion, and the battle for the Haven's survival was about to begin all over again. The night of the launch was unlike anything the Haven had seen since opening. The air was charged, alive with chatter and laughter. Glasses clinked. Silverware scraped gently against plates, and the low hum of jazz curled through the room like smoke. Marcus stood in the kitchen, sweat beading on his forehead, but his heart beat with determination. This was his chance to reclaim what Langston had tried to steal. The first order slipped into the kitchen. Kevin read it out loud. Table 3, shrimp and grits, 1 skillet gumbo. "Let's fire it up," Marcus said. His hands moved with precision, scooping creamy stone-ground grits onto the plate, layering it with plump, seared shrimp kissed with Cajun spices. The gumbo simmered on the stove, the aroma of andouille sausage and fresh herbs filling the kitchen. Plates went out, steaming and vibrant. Marcus leaned toward the service window, watching as the food landed on tables. He could see eyes widen, smiles spreading. A woman at table 3 closed her eyes after the first bite, whispering to her husband, "This tastes like home, but better." Marcus felt his chest swell with pride. For the first time in weeks, the room wasn't filled with doubt. It was filled with joy. Then Kevin stiffened. "Chef." Table 6. Marcus followed his gaze. There sat Arthur Langston, his silver hair catching the light, his pen poised above the little black notebook. The waitress approached with his order, bourbon-glazed short ribs, collard greens, and sweet potato puree. Langston watched her place the dish in front of him with the smirk of a man expecting disappointment. Marcus's stomach tightened. He forced himself to focus. "Stay sharp, everyone," he said. Langston sliced into the short ribs, lifting the fork slowly, as though dragging out the moment for dramatic effect. He tasted it, chewed, and let the silence hang. Then he scribbled something in his notebook, his expression unreadable. Marcus clenched his jaw. He couldn't tell if it was praise or poison. Meanwhile, the rest of the restaurant thrived. Guests laughed louder, asked to meet the chef, and snapped photos of their plates. A local radio host who had been invited raved about the flavors, promising to talk about the Haven on his morning show. "Chef," Kevin whispered urgently, "people love it. They're asking if you'll come out and greet them." Marcus hesitated. His instinct told him to stay in the kitchen, but he also knew that this was bigger than food. It was about connection. He wiped his hands on his apron, straightened his coat, and stepped into the dining hall. Applause rippled through the room. Some guests stood to shake his hand. Others patted his shoulder. A woman said, "Chef, this meal reminds me of my grandmother's cooking, but elevated." "Thank you." Another added, "Chicago needed this kind of flavor." Marcus smiled, though his eyes kept drifting toward Langston's table. The critic sat quietly, writing, not even glancing up at the applause around him. His calm arrogance gnawed at Marcus. Back in the kitchen, Marcus tried to steady himself. The night was going well, but Langston was still the shadow in the corner. His review could either cement a comeback or crush it again. An hour passed, orders flying in and out. The new menu held strong, each dish leaving guests more impressed than the last. Kevin leaned against the counter, grinning. "Chef, we're pulling it off. This feels like a different restaurant." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. It feels like the restaurant we were always meant to be. But just as relief began to sink in, a sudden voice cut through the dining room. Langston's. "Excuse me," he called, his tone carrying across the room. Conversations died, heads turned. Langston stood, holding his fork like a pointer. "May I have a word with the chef?" Marcus's heart pounded. He stepped forward, the room silent, except for the soft clinking of glasses being set down. Langston looked him straight in the eye. "Chef Daniels, isn't it?" "Yes," Marcus replied evenly. Langston raised his fork, pointing at the nearly empty plate before him. "This short rib is different." Murmurs spread through the room. Marcus kept his voice calm. "Different how?" Langston smirked. "It's bold, smoky, tender, and yet—" He tapped his notebook. "Something about it feels almost desperate, as if the chef is trying too hard to prove himself." A few guests frowned at the remark. Marcus felt heat rising in his chest, but he refused to flinch. "Or maybe," he said firmly, "it feels like a chef who knows he's fighting for something worth keeping alive." The room held its breath. Langston's smirk faltered, just slightly, before returning. He sat back down, waving dismissively. "We'll see what the readers think." Conversation slowly resumed, though the tension lingered. Marcus returned to the kitchen, fists clenched. Kevin whispered, "He's baiting you, chef. Don't let him." Marcus exhaled sharply. "I'm not here to please him. I'm here to cook." The rest of the night passed in a blur. Plates kept leaving the kitchen. Compliments kept rolling in, but Marcus's mind stayed fixed on Langston. Every laugh from the critic's table, every note scribbled in that cursed notebook, felt like thunder in Marcus's ears. Finally, as the clock neared midnight, Langston stood to leave. He placed his napkin on the table, smoothed his jacket, and made his way toward the door. This time, though, he paused at the kitchen window. "Chef," he said, his voice calm but sharp, "you've improved. I'll give you that. But improvement doesn't always mean greatness." Then he walked out, leaving Marcus standing frozen, the words echoing like a challenge in the air. Kevin touched Marcus's arm. "Don't listen to him. The guests loved it. You saw their faces. That's real." Marcus nodded slowly, but his thoughts raced. Langston wasn't done. That much was clear. The question was, what would his next move be? As the last guest drifted out and the staff began cleaning up, Marcus stood alone in the dining hall, staring at the empty tables. The night had been a victory, yes, but a fragile one. Tomorrow, the city would wait for Langston's review, and Marcus knew it could either save the Haven or finish it for good. The next morning, Marcus barely touched his breakfast. A plate of eggs and toast sat in front of him, untouched, growing cold. His laptop was open on the dining table in his apartment, the city paper's website glowing on the screen. He refreshed the page over and over, waiting for Arthur Langston's new review. Each second felt like a hammer striking against his ribs. Finally, the headline appeared. "The Haven's Redemption, a step forward or just a show?" Marcus's eyes narrowed as he clicked it. The words spilled across the screen, sharp and cutting as always. Langston wrote, "The Haven has certainly changed since my first visit. The dishes now carry bold flavors, rooted in Southern tradition, but dressed in fine dining polish. The short ribs, in particular, showed surprising depth. Yet, beneath the presentation, there is still the heavy hand of a chef desperate to prove himself." One must wonder if the sudden improvement is genuine growth, or simply a performance to impress critics. Time will tell if the Haven has staying power, or if this was just a well-rehearsed play. Marcus exhaled slowly. It wasn't a total destruction, but it wasn't a victory either. Langston had left the verdict dangling, as though waiting for Marcus to slip. His phone buzzed almost immediately. It was Kevin. "Chef, did you see it?" "I saw it," Marcus said, rubbing his temples. "It's not bad," Kevin insisted. He admitted we improved. "People will read that." Marcus wasn't convinced. Langston's words had a way of planting seeds of doubt. To the public, his review wasn't just an opinion. It was gospel. That afternoon at the Haven, the dining room was busier than it had been in weeks. Guests came with cautious curiosity, some clutching copies of the paper, others scrolling on their phones. "I read Langston's review," one man told the hostess. "Figured I'd come see for myself." The tension in the air was thick. Marcus worked the kitchen like a general leading troops into battle. Every dish that left his hands was perfect. Every plate a silent argument against Langston's doubts. He checked each plate twice, adjusted sauces, and wiped rims clean with the precision of a surgeon. As the night went on, the restaurant pulsed with energy. Tables filled, glasses clinked, laughter returned. The sound gave Marcus a surge of hope. But as he glanced around the room, he noticed something unsettling. At least two diners weren't eating so much as watching. They whispered, scribbled notes, and occasionally snapped pictures of their plates. Kevin leaned close. "Chef, those look like bloggers, food writers, maybe even Langston's people." Marcus frowned. "He's sending spies now?" Kevin shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe people just want to ride on his wave." Marcus forced himself to focus. If the critics were watching, then fine. He'd give them a show worth writing about. Toward the end of the night, a woman at table 8 waved to the waitress and asked to speak to the chef. Marcus wiped his hands and walked out to greet her. She stood, shaking his hand warmly. "Chef Daniels, I run a small column in the Tribune. I came because I was curious after Langston's review. I have to say, your food moved me. That gumbo? It tasted like a memory I didn't know I had." Her praise felt like a spark in Marcus's chest. "Thank you. That means more than you know." The woman smiled. "I'll be writing about this." People need to hear a different voice than Langston's. For the first time in days, Marcus felt a flicker of real hope. Maybe the tide was starting to turn. But then, just as the night seemed steady, trouble struck. At table 4, a middle-aged man suddenly pushed his plate away and shouted, "This food is overrated." Langston was right. It's all just a trick. His voice carried across the room, silencing conversations. Marcus's pulse quickened. He stepped forward. "Sir, is there a problem with your meal?" The man sneered. "Problem? Yeah. The problem is you think you can pass off backyard cooking as fine dining. You're a fraud." Gasps rippled through the room. Marcus kept his tone even. "Sir, if you didn't enjoy your dish, I'd be happy to prepare you something else on the house." But the man wasn't interested in food. He stood, pointing a finger at Marcus. "You're just chasing attention. You're not a real chef. You're a pretender who got lucky." Whispers spread. Some guests frowned at the man. Others looked uncertain. Marcus's fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to fire back, but he forced himself to stay calm. Kevin appeared at his side, murmuring, "Chef, he's trying to make a scene." Marcus took a deep breath. "Sir," he said firmly, "I respect your opinion, but we don't disrespect people in this house. Not the staff, not the guests, and not the food. If you'd like to leave, that's your choice." The man smirked, grabbed his coat, and stormed out. But the damage was done. The buzz of the dining room had dimmed, replaced by uneasy murmurs. After service ended, Marcus sat alone at the prep table, staring at his hands. Kevin slid into the chair across from him. "Chef," he said quietly, "that guy didn't come here to eat. He came to provoke. You saw it." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, and I have a feeling I know why." "You think Langston sent him?" Kevin asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But it feels like every move we make, he's one step ahead. Like he's waiting for us to trip." Kevin clenched his jaw. "So, what do we do?" Marcus looked up, eyes burning with determination. "We keep cooking. We keep fighting. And if Langston wants a war, he's going to get one." As the clock ticked past midnight, and the staff cleaned up in silence, Marcus stood at the kitchen window, staring out at the dark street beyond. The Haven was alive again, yes, but the battle wasn't just in the kitchen anymore. It was in the shadows, in the whispers, in the pages of newspapers. And Marcus knew the fight was only getting started. The following week was a roller coaster. The Haven had customers again, but every night felt like a test. Some diners came to enjoy the food, but many came with folded newspapers or phones open to Langston's review, eager to see if his words were true. The atmosphere was tense. Like every forkful was a trial. Marcus pushed harder than ever. He stood in the kitchen from dawn to midnight, working the line with his team, tasting, adjusting, demanding perfection. His eyes burned from lack of sleep, his hands blistered from constant chopping, but he refused to show weakness. Kevin noticed the toll. One night, as Marcus leaned against the counter catching his breath, Kevin said, "Chef, you've got to slow down. You're burning yourself out." Marcus shook his head. "We can't slow down, not now. Every plate matters. But if you collapse, what happens to us?" Kevin pressed. Marcus didn't answer. He knew Kevin was right, but the thought of letting Langston win, of letting the Haven fade, was unbearable. Then, on a Thursday evening, something unexpected happened. A man in a gray suit walked into the restaurant, flashing a press badge to the hostess. He asked for Marcus by name. In the kitchen, the hostess whispered, "Chef, someone from Channel 7 News is here. He says he wants to do a story on you." Marcus wiped his hands and stepped out. The man extended a hand. "Mr. Daniels, I'm Richard Hale, reporter with Channel 7. I've been following the buzz around this restaurant. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Marcus hesitated. Cameras meant attention, and attention could cut both ways. But this was also a chance to tell his side of the story. He nodded. "Sure, step into my office." He gestured toward the dining hall. The reporter asked about the launch night, the new menu, and of course, about Langston's harsh words. Marcus chose his answers carefully, his voice calm but firm. "I don't cook to please critics," he said. "I cook to share stories through food. My stura, my ruits, my tiltira. If people walk out of here with a memory on their tongue, I've done my job." The reporter scribbled quickly. "And what about Langston?" Marcus paused. He wanted to unleash every ounce of frustration, but instead, he said, "He's entitled to his opinion. But I believe a restaurant should be judged by the people it serves, not just one man. The next night, the segment aired on the evening news. Marcus watched it with his staff gathered around a small TV in the kitchen. The footage showed sizzling pans, steaming plates, and Marcus speaking with quiet intensity. The headline read, "The Haven, fighting back with flavor." By Saturday, the dining hall was packed. Guests lined up outside, eager to try the food they had seen on television. The buzz was back, and for the first time, Marcus felt a surge of victory. But Langston wasn't done. On Monday morning, a new column appeared under his name. The headline was sharp: "Media Tricks and Kitchen Masks. The Danger Hype." Marcus read it aloud to his team, his voice tight. "Television may paint Chef Daniels as a humble hero, but don't be fooled. What I tasted at the Haven was a chef hiding behind smoke and mirrors. Desperation dressed as creativity. And when the cameras fade, the truth will remain. The food does not live up to fame." The words hit like a hammer. Kevin cursed under his breath. "He's trying to crush us all over again." The waitress slammed a tray onto the counter. "Why does he hate you so much, chef? What did you ever do to him?" Marcus rubbed his forehead. "It's not about me. It's about control. Critics like him want to decide who rises and who falls. And I challenge that." That night, the restaurant was busy again, but the tension was thick. Guests whispered as they read Langston's latest column on their phones. Some glanced toward the kitchen window, as if trying to catch a glimpse of the man behind the feud. Halfway through service, a young man approached Marcus directly. "Chef Daniels?" he asked nervously. "Yes," Marcus said, surprised. "I'm a culinary student," the man said. "I read both reviews. Honestly, I think Langston's wrong. Your food inspired me tonight. I just wanted you to know." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He clasped the young man's hand firmly. "Thank you. Keep cooking. Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth." Moments like that kept him going. But outside the restaurant, the war words only grew. Langston supporters filled online forums with insults, calling Marcus overrated, cocky, and a gimmick. Others defended him, praising his food and his resilience. The city was divided, and the Haven had become the battleground. One evening, as Marcus locked up, he noticed a folded envelope tucked into the doorframe. He opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in bold letters. "You're playing in a game you can't win. Close your doors before you're humiliated again." Marcus froze, the paper crumpling slightly in his fist. He scanned the street, but it was empty, quiet except for the hum of distant traffic. Kevin, who was standing beside him, read the note over his shoulder. "Chef, this is getting out of hand." Marcus folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket. "Let him try. I didn't build this place to walk away." But as he walked home that night, the city lights blurring around him, he couldn't shake the feeling. This wasn't just about food anymore. Langston, or whoever was pulling strings, was determined to break him, not just as a chef, but as a man. Marcus clenched his fists in his pockets, whispering to himself, "Then let the fight continue." The Haven was no longer just a restaurant. It had become a war zone of pride, power, and survival. And Marcus was standing right in the center of it. The morning after Marcus found the threatening note, he arrived at the Haven earlier than usual. The city streets were still quiet, the sun barely rising, but his mind was restless. He unlocked the doors and walked through the empty dining room, the faint smell of last night's spices lingering in the air. He set the note on the counter and stared at it again. The words seemed colder in daylight. "You're playing in a game you can't win. Close your doors before you're humiliated again." Kevin walked in minutes later, yawning and carrying a bag of fresh bread. When he saw Marcus staring at the note, his face hardened. "Still thinking about it?" Kevin asked. Marcus nodded. "It wasn't just a jab. Whoever wrote this wants me gone, and they're not going to stop." Kevin placed the bread down and crossed his arms. "So what do we do? Call the cops?" Marcus shook his head. "And tell them what? That some Critics fan slipped me a nasty letter? They'd laugh and tell me to ignore it. No, if they want to fight, they'll have to see I don't scare easy." By noon, the staff gathered, unaware of the note. Marcus kept it to himself, not wanting to spread fear. Instead, he pushed everyone harder during prep, his voice sharp, his eyes sharper. That night, the restaurant was crowded again. The news feature had given them a surge, and despite Langston's latest attack, people wanted to see for themselves what the Haven was about. Plates left the kitchen fast. Laughter filled the room, and the clatter of forks was like music. But midway through the rush, something happened. A customer at table 4 sent his plate back. "It's cold," the waiter explained nervously as he slid the dish onto the counter. Marcus frowned. "Impossible. It just came out." He inspected the plate, untouched. He remade the dish himself, tasting every element before sending it back. 10 minutes later, another plate returned. Then another. Marcus's jaw tightened. He stepped out into the dining room. A small group of diners sat at 3 different tables, whispering loudly enough for others to hear. One of them caught his eye and smirked. "Chef, The man said mockingly, "You might want to turn up the heat back there. Everything's bland tonight." Other guests began to murmur, confused and restless. The energy in the room shifted. Kevin leaned toward Marcus. "They're plants. Somebody sent them here to stir things up." Marcus knew he was right. It was too deliberate, too staged. He forced a smile, nodding politely, then walked back into the kitchen. His hands gripped the counter so tightly his knuckles whitened. The sabotage worked. By closing time, word of mouth spread across social media. The Haven served cold food. Not worth the hype? Langston was right. When Marcus checked his phone after service, he saw the posts climbing, the comments multiplying. His chest tightened. The next day, a food blogger released a video titled, "Is a Haven overrated?" The thumbnail showed a plate from Marcus's kitchen with the caption, "Cold and flavorless." It was clearly staged, but the internet rarely cared about truth. Marcus slammed his phone down. "They're trying to bury me alive," he muttered. That night, as he walked home, a black SUV slowed down beside him. The tinted window rolled halfway, and a voice from inside said, "Maybe it's time you close shop, chef." Then the car sped off, leaving Marcus frozen on the sidewalk. He reached home shaken, but refused to tell anyone, not even Kevin. Instead, he poured himself a glass of water, sat at the table, and whispered, "They won't scare me. They can't." But deep down, he knew this was bigger than Langston's pen. Someone was orchestrating a campaign. Staged customers, planted reviews, threats. It wasn't just about criticism. It was personal. The following weekend brought another blow. A health inspector arrived unannounced during peak hours. He walked through the kitchen with a clipboard, checking corners, sniffing containers, scribbling notes. Kevin whispered to Marcus, "This feels too convenient. Who tips off an inspector on a Saturday night?" Marcus watched the inspector with narrowed eyes. "Someone who wants us shut down." After 2 tense hours, the inspector left, leaving behind a long list of violations, most of them minor, some outright false. But they were enough to threaten fines and a possible closure. When Marcus read the report, his chest burned with anger. This is a setup. The staff looked to him for answers, but he didn't have any. All he had was determination. That night, after everyone left, Marcus sat alone in the darkened dining room, the silence pressing down on him. He replayed everything. The review, the note, the staged customers, the SUV, the inspector. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. This wasn't random. This was war. And whoever was behind it, Marcus decided, wasn't going to win. He pulled out his notebook, the same one where he used to write recipes, and began jotting down names, dates, and details. Every insult, every sabotage, every clue. If they wanted to fight dirty, he would keep record. Kevin walked back in, having forgotten his jacket, and saw Marcus hunched over the notebook. "What are you doing?" Marcus looked up, his eyes fierce. "I'm done reacting. From now on, I'm keeping track. Whoever's pulling strings, Langston, his friends, or someone else, they'll slip up, and when they do, I'll be ready." Kevin nodded slowly, a mix of worry and respect in his face. "Then I'm with you. Whatever comes, chef, we fight it together." Marcus closed the notebook and tapped it with his finger. "Good, because this isn't just about food anymore. This is about survival." The Haven's lights flickered in the empty night as Marcus locked up, his mind racing. Somewhere in the city, someone was plotting his downfall. But Marcus Daniels wasn't about to hand them victory. He whispered under his breath as he stepped into the dark street. "If they want a war, they've got one." Marcus woke before dawn, his mind heavy but sharp. The sabotage had reached a new level. Threats, fake customers, a crooked health report. Whoever was behind this wanted the Haven gone for good. He dressed quickly, grabbed his notebook, and drove to the restaurant in the dark. Sitting at one of the corner tables, he flipped open a book and stared at the messy pages of names and dates. He drew a line under the last entry and wrote in bold letters, "Find the source." By mid-morning, Kevin walked in and spotted Marcus hunched over the notes. "You didn't sleep, did you?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't have time to sleep. Someone's paying people to ruin us. That inspector didn't just walk in by chance. This is coordinated." Kevin sat down across from him. "So what's the plan?" "We can't just wait for the next blow." Marcus tapped a notebook. "We fight back. Quietly." That afternoon, Marcus called an old friend from culinary school, Jasmine Torres. She wasn't a chef anymore. She worked as a freelance journalist. If anyone could dig deeper than he could, it was her. When she arrived at the Haven, Marcus wasted no time. He slid the health report across the table. "Read this. Half of it is fake. Someone's pushing to get us shut down." Jasmine skimmed the pages, her brows furrowing. "This looks fishy. I've seen cases like this before. Restaurant get targeted. Inspectors suddenly find violations. Critics jump in to bury the story. It usually means someone powerful wants your spot." Marcus leaned in. "Can you find out who?" Jasmine nodded slowly. "I'll dig, but you need to be careful. If this goes high up, You'll be stepping on dangerous toes. Marcus gave a bitter smile. I'm already their target. What else can they do? Later that night, the dining room filled again, but Marcus noticed something: fewer faces than usual. The buzz had slowed. Some regulars came, but the energy wasn't the same. In the middle of service, Kevin leaned over and whispered, "We lost 3 reservations tonight. People said they heard things. The damage is spreading." Marcus forced himself to stay calm. He cooked harder, plating every dish with precision, as if daring anyone to find fault. But the tension in the air wouldn't leave. Every laugh in the dining room sounded sharper. Every phone lifted for a picture made him wonder if it would become another attack online. After closing, Jasmine returned with news. She set her laptop on the counter. "Marcus, I think I found something." He leaned closer. On the screen was a list of restaurant properties in the city. A new name appeared: Langston Dining Group. Marcus's eyes widened. "Langston owns restaurants?" Jasmine nodded. "Not just restaurants. He's part of a group that invests in high-end dining spots. And guess where they just bought property?" Marcus read the address on the screen. His stomach dropped. It was 2 blocks away from the Haven. Kevin swore under his breath. So that's it. He's trying to clear the field. If the Haven fails, his new spot shines. Marcus rubbed his forehead, rage boiling inside him. All this, the reviews, the stage customers, the inspector, it's not just spite. It's business. He wants my restaurant erased before it opens. Jasmine closed the laptop. "You need proof. If you go public with this, you'll look paranoid without evidence." "I'll keep digging." The next few days were tense. Business limped along, but every night brought whispers, skeptical looks, and the weight of sabotage. One night, Marcus caught a man in a hoodie slipping something into the alley dumpster. Marcus rushed out, grabbing the man's arm. "What are you doing?" Marcus barked. The man yanked free and ran, disappearing into the dark. Marcus opened the dumpster and froze. Inside were bags of rotting meat, all stamped with the Haven's logo. Kevin arrived, breathless. "What the? We don't even buy this stuff." Marcus's heart raced. If a health inspector found this, it would shut them down instantly. "Take pictures," Marcus ordered. "We need to document this. Every trick, every setup, we collect proof." Kevin snapped photos while Marcus dragged the fake meat out, furious. Whoever was behind this was getting desperate. The next morning, Marcus called Jasmine. "They planted spoiled meat in my dumpster. I have photos." She swore softly. "That's serious. Keep everything. Don't throw away a single piece of evidence. This could tie back to Langston's group, if we're lucky." Marcus hung up and sat in the empty dining room, his fists clenched. For the first time, fear edged past his anger. They weren't just attacking his reputation anymore. They were trying to frame him for crimes that could end his career permanently. That night, Marcus gathered his staff. He told them everything: the sabotage, the threats, the planted evidence. The room fell silent. One young server asked nervously, "Chef, what'd they actually get us shut down?" Marcus looked around at their tired but loyal faces. "Then we go down fighting. But I won't let that happen. Not while I'm breathing. We cook better than anyone in the city, and no critic or crooked inspector can change that truth." His words lit a fire. The staff clapped, voices rising, their loyalty stronger than ever. But Marcus knew the battle wasn't over. That same week, Jasmine called with a chilling update. "Marcus, I found connection. One of the stage customers who left bad reviews? He's on the payroll of Langston Dining Group. I have the documents." Marcus's pulse quickened. Proof. Finally, proof. But Jasmine's voice dropped. "Be careful. If they realize you know this, they might not stop at sabotage. They'll protect their investment at all costs." Marcus thanked her and hung up, staring at the walls of his restaurant. He had proof in hand, but exposing it meant going head-to-head with powerful people. Still, he couldn't turn back. Too much had been taken already. That night, as he locked the doors, he whispered to himself, "You wanted to fight, Langston. Now you've got one." The morning sun cast a pale light over the Haven. Marcus stood by the front windows, watching the city wake up. His mind was racing, his heart heavy but steady. For weeks he had fought back quietly, gathering proof, cooking through sabotage, and protecting the staff who trusted him. Now it was time to end this. Jasmine had sent him the last piece of evidence the night before. Emails. Clear. Undeniable proof that Langston Dining Group had ordered operations against the Haven to weaken its image before the grand opening 2 blocks away. It was all there: the hired fake customers, the payments, the pressure on inspectors. Marcus stared at the printed copies laid out on his desk. His whole body buzzed with anger. He had spent his life proving he belonged in kitchens where people told him he didn't. He had built this restaurant brick by brick. And now, someone wanted to steal it all. He wasn't going to let that happen. By late afternoon, Jasmine arrived with her camera bag and recorder. "You ready?" she asked, her voice low. Marcus nodded. More ready than ever. Together, They walked into the dining room where his staff waited. He laid the papers on the table, letting everyone see. "This is who's been after us," he said firmly. "This is why the reviews came, why the inspector showed up, why they planted spoiled food in our dumpster. It wasn't about us messing up. It was about money, power, and fear. They wanted us gone before their new restaurant opened." The staff leaned in, whispering, their shock turning into fire. Jasmine added, "I'm writing the story tonight. It'll go live in the morning. But Marcus, there's one more thing." She turned to him, her eyes sharp. "Langston himself made a reservation here tonight." The words hung in the air. Marcus froze. "What?" Jasmine nodded. "I checked. 7 o'clock. Table for 2. He's coming here." The room went quiet. Kevin clenched his fists. "He's bold enough to eat here after all this?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "No. He's coming to see if we're broken." The clock ticked slowly toward evening. Marcus could barely breathe as he worked in the kitchen, preparing every dish with perfect care. Word had spread that the food critic, Thomas Langston, would be dining at the Haven tonight. The dining room filled earlier than usual, buzzing with tension. At exactly 7, the door opened. Langston walked in, wearing his sharp suit, his face calm as if nothing had happened. A woman followed him, a colleague, perhaps. The room went silent for a moment before the clinking of silverware resumed. Marcus peeked through the pass. His hand shook, but his voice was steady. "Table 6. Make sure it's flawless." Kevin leaned close. "You don't owe this man perfect food, Marcus." Marcus shook his head. "I owe it to myself. He thinks he can destroy me. I'll show him what he tried to erase." The kitchen burst into motion. Marcus cooked every dish himself, searing, chopping, tasting, plating with precision. He poured his heart into it, the same way he had when the Haven first opened. When the plates went out, the dining room hushed again. Langston lifted his fork, took a bite, and paused. His expression was unreadable. He chewed slowly, swallowed, then tried another bite. Across the room, Jasmine's camera clicked quietly. Finally, Langston set his fork down. He leaned back, looking around the restaurant. Marcus wiped his hands and stepped out of the kitchen. The room seemed to hold its breath as he approached the critic's table. "Mr. Langston," Marcus said evenly, "how's the food tonight?" Langston studied him, his lips twitching into the faintest smile. "Better than I expected." Marcus leaned closer, his voice low, but clear enough for nearby tables to hear. "I know what you did." Langston's smile faded. "Excuse me?" Marcus pulled a folded paper from his apron, one of the emails Jasmine had given him. He placed it gently on the table. "You tried to bury me before your new place opened. Fake reviews, paid customers, inspectors. All of it. I have the proof." A ripple of murmurs spread through the dining room. Langston's face darkened. He glanced at the paper, then back at Marcus. "You think waving paper around changes anything?" Langston hissed. Marcus straightened. "It changes everything. Because tomorrow, the whole city will see it. Jasmine Torres is here tonight. She's publishing the story in the morning." Langston's eyes flicked toward Jasmine, who raised her camera and snapped another photo. For the first time, the critic looked rattled. His calm mask cracked, and anger flared in his eyes. "You don't know who you're dealing with, chef." Marcus didn't flinch. "No, you don't. This restaurant isn't just food. It's people, it's work. It's every night we stayed late cleaning when no one believed in us. You wanted to erase that for money, but you failed. We're still here. And tomorrow, everyone will know what you are." The room erupted in applause. Diners stood, clapping, cheering. Some pulled out their phones, recording the confrontation. Langston's face twisted as he realized the moment was slipping beyond his control. He stood quickly, throwing his napkin on the table. "You will regret this," he snapped, before storming out with his companion trailing behind him. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, the sound of applause filling his ears. He felt his chest rise and fall, heavy with relief and adrenaline. Jasmine stepped forward, gripping his shoulder. "It's over. By morning, his power won't protect him. You exposed him in the one place he thought he owned, your restaurant." Marcus looked around the dining room. His staff stood beaming, his guests smiling proudly. For the first time in weeks, hope returned to the walls of the Haven. Later that night, after the last plate was washed and the lights dimmed, Marcus sat alone in the quiet dining room. He thought about the journey, the humiliation, the sabotage, the long nights fighting shadows. He whispered to himself, "We made it. We're still standing." Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the storm that had just broken. But inside the Haven, Marcus knew the truth. He hadn't just defended a restaurant. He had defended his name, his craft, and every dream that had carried him there. And tomorrow, the world would know too. If you like this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, in order to strengthen our community, let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.